Super interesting. Something comes to mind is which is kind of bringing us back maybe like to the next few years evolution of like both PinAI and Storyside is like one thing that can be like the intersection of both is like how do you discover the value of IP, right? And kind of related to this idea of like bidding on like micro rights, right? Like do you guys have like any work in that direction? Obviously we've done some work on it around like intent matching and kind of like discovery value of like different type of agent services, but I'm curious like from the IP perspective, right? Like there is this data that like sometimes like you don't really know how much is valued until like people start using it. So
yeah, I think it's such a complex question. The interesting thing is to look at what's the state of the art, and the state of the art is there is very, very, very little market for IP right now. Like the market size is huge, right? It's $1 trillion industry, but why I say there's not a good pricing mechanism is because it's Disney owns all its IP, right? And so they have some theoretical value, and that's accounted for in the total addressable market. But then there's not a frequent number of transactions. So you have Disney with 100 lawyers, and then maybe they want to so now they want to use Spider-Man, and Sony owns Spider-Man, so now you have this deal that goes back and forth, and so there's price discovery, but it's one mega transaction, and there's no visibility. Like maybe there's some report of how much that transaction is for, but the economics are closed, right? So now other participants in the market, not only is it very expensive for them to engage in these transactions because they also need to have a 100-person legal team, they don't even have visibility into how much that transaction was if they wanted to make a comparable transaction, right? So you have this very interesting market structure in IP today where you have a massive size of the asset class, but then very little price discovery or very little quote unquote liquidity, right? And because the transactions are so large and so opaque. And so what Story trying to do is, it's going to be a very weird future if Story succeeds, because now we're opening up the world for a whole universe of applications, and PinAI can be one of them, where they have methods for pricing it, right? And so you see this a little bit on the margins, like YouTube, Twitter, they start paying their creators, but it's all proprietary, right? Who knows if they're paying you based on the value of your IP, or they're paying you just because they're targeting this demographic creator, so they're trying to give them money for free, right? So you have no lot. Again, that's not really price; that's more of a subsidy. And so when it comes to true like market forces, there's not been the infrastructure that allows people to scalably create long tail transactions around IP in a frictionless way. So Story isn't so focused on pricing as much as it is on like unlocking the ability for applications to price by unlocking the technology to have these low friction, high transparency transactions on the IP side.
Yeah. Actually, I was curious in the specific case we talk about celebrities' personal data.
Yeah,
that's kind of a good angle of IP, but also it's like personal data. How do you view, like, let's say if we create a Taylor Swift personal AI using Taylor Swift or chat history and probably the non-sensitive part of that, and also like all the selfies and all that of like Taylor Swift, like how much should we pay Taylor Swift? Do we have some mental model of like?
Yeah, well, what we've seen at Story so far is that like the artist owns the AI version of themselves, right? So artist has like an AI clone, so to speak, or an AI avatar. And then it's almost like the existing model where if you want Taylor Swift to perform, or if you want to license her song to play at your wedding or whatever it is, like there is some sort of licensing deal done. Basically, I think what's going to happen now is that through like PinAI, which is going to hold all the creators' data, and then through Story, which allows for this sort of pricing to happen, or these transactions to happen on an economic level, people are like Taylor Swift, for example, can set terms programmatically for how others can engage with their AI clone or AI avatar, right? Yeah. So she might say, okay, well, I'm Taylor Swift, so I'm going to charge a lot, right? So if you pay me $1 million upfront, or maybe 500,000, right? Like some high amount upfront in USDC, and share, let's say 25% of the revenues on the back ends that you make, if you're going to make revenues, then you can instantly generate a license, a real binding contract, both on chain and off chain, to use my IP, and my agent will then go sing at your party or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So I think you're now going to have the ability to not only have agents that represent a creator's IP and are basically a digital clone of them and can scale everywhere, but also the ability to permissionlessly through an API leverage their IP, right? And so what you're saying, David, with the hard rules, like Story is building the hard rules for how AI agents themselves, which can be representatives of real people, how they can like automatically and permissionlessly expand and grow and monetize.
Very interesting.